Hi, this is Adrienne from Mental Talk, and we have a great treat for you today. We're going to be talking with two co-editors and contributing authors of a new book called We're Not Okay, Black Faculty Experiences in Higher Education Strategies. This is part of our kind of celebrating Minority Mental Health Month, and what a great time to wrap it up during this month with this great interview. We're going to be talking with Dr. Antija Allen. She's director of Pellissippi Academic Center for Excellence and a tenured assistant professor of psychology at Pellissippi State Community College. She has 2 decades of experience as an educator. She's won the 21-22 recipient Roger Crown Excellence in Teaching Award and is certified in both diversity, equity, and inclusion and online teaching. She also owns Allen Ivy Prep Consulting, which specializes in career coaching and professional development. Dr. Allen recently published, which includes in this book, Academic Freedom and Classroom Discussions, and the best-selling edited collection entitled, of course, We Are Not Okay. We're going to be talking with Justin T. Stewart. He's a risk management analyst in corporate banking. He's a faculty career coach at Allen Ivy Prep Consulting and former entertainment journalist. Justin has worked in multiple industries, including higher education, career services, and corporate banking. These experiences, including being a member of minority networks such as BOLD, Black Organizations, Leaders, and Doers, has exposed him to diverse individuals, cultures, and perspectives. So alongside his colleague, Dr. Allen, We're Not Okay, Justin believes that is an opportunity to shine a light on racial disparities and continues the conversation that can lead to meaningful and progressive shifts in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Justin earned his BA in journalism from Clark Atlantic University, and we're so excited to get started. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having us.
So I'm going to ask you, I'm really excited that you're here, and I want to, this is Minority Mental Health Month, and I really want to work and help the next generation of young people, particularly Black men, boys and girls, and young adults, and particularly moving forward in academia or in higher education. I want to kind of mentor them and give them some tips. So I want to start off with the questions here. I'm passionate about people starting and writing a book, and I want to ask you, what was it like to co-create your book, which is We Are Not Okay, okay? And thinking about the kind of racial injustice point of view and the environment, who's going to read it, your position in academia, how was you feeling about finishing the book from the last page, last part you edited? How was you feeling about the end result of your book?
I will say that the process was very long, and at times it was extremely rough because many people have described the book as being very heavy. So it's necessary information. It's strategies that are going to be helpful to not only hopefully people who are currently in higher ed, but as you mentioned, those who plan or hope to come into higher ed later on. So we needed to make sure we put it out there, even though we knew that it was going to be a heavy read. I think more than anything, it felt good to finish it and to now have it out to the masses and know that not just within the US, but outside of the US, there are people who are able to benefit from this information. But it was definitely, at one point it was therapeutic writing it, being in higher ed myself and sharing a lot of the experiences, not only that I shared myself in my chapters, but that contributing authors shared. It was therapeutic, kind of feeling like, oh, okay, I'm not alone in this, like kind of having that support in that way. But then it also became frustrating at times and depressing at times because I'm like, wow, this is really going on all over and has been going on for a really long time. So that can really take a toll on you as well.
And I want to echo Antia's sentiments. It was very bittersweet moment. There was a lot of emotions, roller coaster. It was exciting to be able to get all this information to like, oh, this is what's going on. Everybody's giving their experience. Everyone's giving their perspectives. Like, we're making a book. We're actually writing a book. We're at the end, our conclusion, writing that last word. But at the same time, to what Antija mentioned, it was exhausting because you read through it. It's almost deflating because it's so happy. I'm so overly ecstatic that people came to be so vulnerable to share these stories. In the same breath, you say, like, no one should have to go through this. We're speaking specifically about higher education, but when we look at it from a racial level, when we look at it from societal level, when we look at marginalized communities, everything that's being expressed throughout these pages, I'm glad that it's getting out there, but it kind of because it also gives a close view, a microscopic view of this is what people deal with. And it's not it's just me, or it's not somebody just crying on their own. No, these are true stories that are happening to so many people, to the point where you need to address it because people are really going through it, and we need to do something before it gets to a boiling point. I think that we've already reached that boiling point, which is what made this book very timely. But it's like, do you really want to see where we go from here? Because we don't want to necessarily pay for consequences, whatever they may entail, based upon certain things that are going on and not being corrected.
I mean, and you were talking about higher education strategies. When I read the book, I'm literally, a lot of it, I was thinking about my life and things that I went through. I'm not in any type of academia, but it was very similar. I'm in IT. I was in IT. I was in higher positions of only the only one. There was no men of color, especially Black men, which I used to always get really irritated by. I'm like, where's the Black men? And I found I was at I'm just gonna go, just tell a little story because it really hit me. I mean, what you all are struggling with in higher education, as far as like, it was very similar, and not everything was similar, but I felt nobody understood me. Talking about issues of kind of like passing, things like that you have to do in the real world, and things and language you have to use in the workplace versus home, that kind of thing. So I understand that for sure. And it was kind of sad because I now, have my own, nonprofit, and I feel like it's still going on. And it was just really kind of heartbreaking that we're still going through these challenges. And I want to talk about that, about the book. Why did you think about bringing in other person's stories versus, I'm sure you had your own stories you could write 2 books out of. Why was it important that you wanted to share the challenges of what everybody else was feeling or going through as well in the book?
I think there's strength in numbers, right? So when you have just one person telling their story, not to say that can't be powerful all on its own. As you said, I probably could have this could go on for years. This book, I got several editions if it was just my own personal experiences. But I think it was important to find out what other people were going through at different types of institutions, bringing in the Black male voice, bringing in the adjunct faculty voice, bringing in voices from people who live in areas that I've never lived in, like the Midwest, and sharing those experiences. So I feel like when you have more voices there, you have a larger amount of representation. So we all may identify as being Black and brown people, but it doesn't mean that we all necessarily come from the same perspective. And I think bringing in those different perspectives really makes it more representative of the Black faculty population, and more likely that there'll be people that will see themselves somewhere in this book. So, for example, as before I transitioned into my director role, I was a tenured assistant professor. I just gained tenure. That experience, that experience is very different than the experience of someone who is an adjunct faculty member who doesn't know if they're going to have a job next semester or not. And so they already have this guard up, and they already have this uncertainty about the stability of their position. So they're automatically, just from that perspective, they're going to react differently and act differently in different situations, and maybe how they present information, what information they present, being really careful because they don't want to upset the students. They don't want to upset the administration. So there's a certain privilege that comes with having tenure. I didn't want people to feel like, well, here comes this voice of this person who already has privilege, so I wanted to have other voices involved.
Yeah. And I think another thing that is used a lot is just saying the Black experience isn't really monolithic. It's not one specific way. Adrienne, I'm glad that you mentioned you working in IT. This book spoke to you, because myself, I've worked in several industries, higher education, banking, and certain things that we've talked about in the book, imposter syndrome, that acceptance, looking for belonging. That's across all industries. So I think for myself and Antija, we know that there are instances where people are in their own circles where I can have these conversations with my select group of people, but if these conversations aren't revealed to the decision makers and those that can make changes, then we really can't do anything but talk to each other. So we found this to be a great opportunity based on certain experiences that Antija shared, certain experiences that I shared, and we saw the parallels. So it was like, we can't be the only people going through this, and we need to provide a platform for those that don't have a platform, provide an opportunity for those to have that voice to share with those that need to hear it. And I think that not only allowed us to take a little bit of the pressure off of us, but also allowed us to lift up more voices. As Antija mentioned, we didn't just speak to people on the East Coast. We reached out to the East Coast, the Midwest, down South, the West Coast. We were trying to see what we get internationally, but this is a story that's bigger than me. It's bigger than Antija. So we need to share as much as we can. And that was always the plan. And that's what continues to be the plan, even as we go more in depth into this book and even start thinking about other things. How can we lift and how can we amplify as many Black and brown voices as we can, or ultimately amplify as many marginalized voices as we can, because they're not always provided that opportunity to be able to speak. And we want to make sure, whether you're at the entry level or even if you're at the executive level, every voice counts from top to bottom. So we wanted to provide that platform to let those voices be heard.
And I wanted to go into the adjunct profession, because I have a friend who is one, so I kind of know the struggle. I told my friend, you need to write a book about the struggle when it comes to, I mean, congratulations on tenure, because that is a feat of itself. I hear it's so difficult to get, and it's so like you're stuck in this limbo of not knowing, not having benefits. I don't understand how all the education that you have, and people don't even have, you're getting part-time salary and you're not even getting benefits. Is it either different from people of color versus other people who are not a professor, who have a different life experience as a professor? Can you explain a little bit of that as well for our viewers?
When you have an adjunct faculty in general, for one, one semester, they can call you in the last minute to teach a course. So you could have no idea whether you're even going to have, so you talk about the money, you don't even know if that money is going to be available to you that following semester. So you can't even count on it, and you can't even plan for it. And then the money that they give you is usually not much. Right. Yeah. And then when you are there, you feel like you're a visitor there. Like you feel like you're not a part of the team. You feel like you're not a part of the organization. I remember being an adjunct. I did not have an office. I didn't even have an office space. Like when I first started as being an adjunct many years ago, I didn't even have an office space. People would literally talk to me in the hallway, right? It was like, that's so we could have our conversations. So that means a lot. Like if somebody even can I even get a chair? You couldn't there was nothing. And then your hours, they would say, hey, about your office hours, well, you could stay after this already class that's running late, because you always get the classes that nobody else wants. So this class that's already running late, can you stay after and talk to someone in the classroom after your time is done for that particular time? So many adjuncts struggle with wanting to be full-time. Some people are good with being adjuncts. They're like, look, I just want to get in and out. I don't really want to be a part of this whole system for the long haul. But for those that really want to be full-time, I've seen people who are adjuncts for 10, 15, 20 years at the same institution, applying over and over again for full-time and being rejected over and over again for full-time. Some of them not even getting an interview. And again, no benefits. I think if they have to call out sick, they don't even get paid for that. It's truly, truly a struggle to be in that position. It really, truly is.
We're thinking about young people who might be listening to the podcast and like, I want to be in academia. I want to kind of share my experiences and my education with a different generation. What's great about being what's great about being a professor, teacher, adjunct, tenure? What's great about it? What are some of the benefits you got? I mean, I've read a little bit about the differences. We'll talk about that a little bit, about the difference between, I don't want to say respect, but students talking to different types of teachers and the biases that might happen. I want you to kind of go into that a little bit. But what's some of the benefits of being a teacher, sharing your passion for education?
I think for me, especially when I was teaching and in the classroom, I taught psychology. I'm actually teaching a graduate course now at an institution here in New York, which has been, so for me, it's really rewarding because you're getting to see people work towards, and many times like the job of their dreams, whatever it may be, right? You get to be a little piece of that journey, which to me never gets old, is always exciting. I get inspired by my students. You know, I get inspired by like how motivated they are and by some of the work that they're already doing. And some of them have gone through a lot. They've had struggles in their lives and they're still able to like get up every day and still push forward towards this goal that they have. So for me, more than anything, and people say this all the time, it's all about a lot of times it's supposed to always be about the students. And for me, that's what has kept me always coming back. And I just enjoy teaching. Like I have fun with it. I like them to have fun with it. We laugh. So if you enjoy the experience, then it makes it all that much more rewarding. So it can be hard to step away from that. Even though all those outside factors are going on, it can be really hard to step away from it.
Justin, I want to kind of talk to you because you're a consultant and you're trying to change the worldview, higher education, just basically being in the space of the workplace. Mm-hmm. And you see a lot of places that don't have men of color, particularly Black men. In IT, we talk about, I worked in a lot of firms, explain to me how you can educate the masses about what we need to do to make this not happen anymore, or what things that the biases that companies see when they don't want to hire someone of color, particular, that are they qualified? We talk about that in the book. Are they qualified for a role? Can you share your view on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think for me, it's just being able to enhance our cultural competencies. All of us across the board, we all have certain perspectives, negative, positive, that we feel about each other, us speaking to one another, us speaking about different communities. Everyone has a different perspective, but it's about how can we grow within these experiences? How can we transition these negative biases into positive outlooks? So I think one of the things that is instrumental, infrastructurally wise, whether we're talking about higher education, whether we're talking about the auto industry, the banking industry, whatever it is, it's just providing opportunities to have these conversations. I know for my job, there's a lot of things called employee resource groups. So it's a lot of communities, sometimes marginalized communities, where we're looking at Black, brown, disabled, things of that nature, where anyone can join, but we all are part of the conversation. So it may be my Black experience, but I want to welcome you into the Black experience. We have a lot of conversation about allyship, and we have a lot going on in the world, a lot going on in the country, in which we have a lot of people that are using a lot of bumper stickers, putting a lot of things to say, I stand behind you. But what are we truly doing to really understand? Nobody's asking to provide funding or anything, but do you truly understand me? Do you have empathy for me? Do you understand what I'm telling you? Or are you just saying, oh, that just sounds so sad? What can I tell you, and how can you help me move to the next level? How can you help me heal? I don't need you to heal for me, but I if you can be a tool, if you can be an asset, that's ideal. So it's providing these support groups within the business, because if we're honest, most of us spend our days at work. Some of us spend our weekends at work. A lot of our relationships that we develop are work relationships. So how can we make work as much of a family? Once again, another bumper sticker word, or another community, or teammates and family. How are we truly family? How are we truly coming together? Trying to develop these types of programs within the infrastructure, really assessing our executive leadership, really assessing the makeup, the demographics. Like, we only have 2 Black men or Black women in a executive leadership of like 15. There's only 1 woman or 1 white woman, or whatever the case, but it's predominantly 20 white men. Like, if we've really developed, it can't just be, oh yeah, they're just the most qualified. So it's really taking a close look and saying, what are we basing this off of? Is it a traditional or an obsolete train of thought? Or are we actually trying to move into the future? And if we're moving into the future, are we dictating it by the past, or are we looking at current voices and future voices to take us to those next steps? And I think by implementing those type of resources, we can really have a better idea of understanding the voice of the people and kind of making applicable changes.
I mean, you hit it on the head. Let me tell you, because I've had a couple careers, and I realized that I wanted to kind of give back, and I'm passionate about mental health. My mother had a mental illness. I'm going to do my TED Talk one day. One of the things that I noticed, just even in nonprofit spaces, in these big giant CEO positions or executive director positions, I always look at the board. I look at the board staff, I look at the staff, every website I go to, because there are organizations that are, small and large, but the large ones particularly tend to have all white men, and they might have that 1 white woman that's sitting there. And, I know it's a big thing right now. Everybody's kind of like trying to get into this diversity space, DEI, of, we need to change. We need to change. Funding is doing that, trying to do it. But I still haven't seen, I'm seeing the legwork, what you talked about, as they're like, let's make a difference. Let's make sure we have this equity and all that kind of stuff. But then I don't really see them understanding. I'm on these, these type of nonprofit groups and stuff like that. I don't see them understanding what is really happening. I don't see them understanding the issues about generational trauma and why these things are happening and why we're not at the table. I mean, people just don't get it. And I, have to educate myself. Just be honest. I have to educate. I educated myself too, because I lived in the space, and I wasn't thinking in a kind of a way of how can I educate people who are not part of, who are allies and not understanding. And so I had to kind of get into that mind space as well. And I don't know the answer. I feel like we still have a long way to go. And this is, bring up the topic of another question that I had in my mind, the code switching that you talked about in the book. And I want you to define it, so everybody, the listeners, we have all types of diverse listeners. What is code switching? Why is it valuable? Why is it something that we really need to understand just in ourselves, in our own community, and why it's happening? And should it happen? I don't know.
So from a base level, for me, when we're talking about code switching, when it was initially introduced, it dealt with how we speak. So I can be standing up, be very, as I would call it, prim and proper. I enunciate. I make sure that I clearly state all of my words. I'm very particular about how I speak, what types of words that I use, how I communicate. It's almost like saying whatever the dominant culture is, I will code switch or assimilate to that culture. So, I mean, on a everyday, day-to-day basis, we do it all the time. When you talk to your grandmother, when you talk to your mother, when you talk to a girlfriend, a boyfriend, you talk to a friend, you speak differently when you're speaking to everybody. When you meet someone that's Black, when you meet somebody that's white, when you meet somebody Hispanic, you may inherently speak a different way. But when we're talking about code switching within the professional experience, to your question of why it's necessary, Adrienne, it's a necessary tool, or as we call it, a maladaptive coping strategy for a lot of marginalized communities, because they're trying to get acceptance and get that state of belonging. To what we mentioned before about like stereotypes, biases. If I'm going into the workplace, I want to find my own version of quote unquote success. So I'm going to look at this executive leadership. I'm going to look at leadership. I'm going to look at managers and see how they are, how they expect me to be. Are there certain stereotypes that they look at me as a Black man of, oh, how is he dressed? How is he wearing his clothes? Because that's the other evolution of code switching. It's not just about speech. It's how does he look when he dresses? How is his hair? When we talk about things like the Crown Act and having braids in your hair versus having locks, like how is this person what we consider to be professional? When we define professional, there are certain, again, traditional or obsolete definitions that unfortunately marginalized communities still have to abide by to be taken seriously when we're talking about corporate America, when we're talking about the professional world, when we're talking about higher education. There's still a example or definitive way of how you're supposed to look. I think that we are slowly but surely transitioning where I can come to work with a beard and not think twice about it. Or some people may wear tattoos, but the fact that that was even a question tells you we have,
my nice scarf. I started to wear it more. Okay.
Yeah, and it's you shouldn't be judged by how you look. We all come in different shapes and sizes. We all come in different flavors. If you look at my resume, it should be, hey, am I adequate for the job? Yes or no? And we've started, I hope we're starting to veer towards that more of, am I qualified? Is my experience enough to have me at the job versus, ooh, you got green hair. I don't know. You're expressive and we're cultured, but I don't know if your culture matches our culture. So, unfortunately, code switching is a necessary evil that way when you're trying to climb the ladder or whatever you're trying to do, depending on if you're not the dominant culture or if you're in a predominantly white institution, for you to be taken seriously.
I think even in the academia world, Dr. Allen, I mean, are you still talk? I mean, you probably talk differently to your students versus faculty. Is it that something that you do, or is it trying to get into the mindset of a student and relating to them? Find yourself kind of doing that as well?
I would say early in my career. So I've been in higher ed since 2004, and I've been teaching since 2004. So early on, it's a little different because, you want to make sure that you do all the things that Justin said. I want to move up the ladder. I want to fit in. I want to assimilate to it. And plus, it wasn't just that. It was like even your parents teach you these things as well, right? Of how are you going to be successful? These are the things you need to do to be successful. This is how you have to wear your hair. These are the types of clothes you have to wear. This is how you need to speak. And so I had to not just get out of what I'd learned from society. I also had to get out of what I had learned a little bit. I don't want to. My mom's the greatest. She's like, if she's listening to this, she well prepared me for the world. That was something I really had to step away from, to kind of just say, I need to step into my own authentic self. And so I would honestly say, and it probably came with age as well, within the last 5 to 7 years, how I speak to you, how I'm speaking to you right now is how I speak to my students, is how I speak to my colleagues. It's exhausting to try to, it was exhausting to try to do different things to different people. It's a lot easier to be who I am at all times. So
yeah, I mean, I agree.
It's a journey. It took a while to get there. That was not instant at all.
That I agree with that, because I was usually always in any place I've been, because I lived in Japan for 2.5 years. I mean, I was a different breed. People didn't get me. And I was always in different spaces, law spaces, educational spaces, because this brought up the what was in the book about competency, like them thinking that you are good enough. So I was not going into my thing, but I was a trainer at one point, and it was kind of not higher education, but it was IT. I would teach CEOs. I would teach people in higher positions something about Excel or some type of software. they would come in. This was one of my pet peeves long time ago. They would come in and like literally have like be excited, and then they realize who their teacher was going to be, and they literally was crestfallen. Like, and one of the things that used to bother me was always was the CEOs. It was always a CEO who would challenge me in my own classroom for the first 10 minutes. They would say things like, "Oh, well, you know, should we go with this and that kind of thing?" And I didn't understand why. I kind of knew why, but I was kind of like, why did people do this? I used to be burned about it because I get these reviews and I used to always get 10s. You know, you get, you know, the thing. Like, you know, rate this instructor. I had to get to the point of saying, well, I'm going to go right here. Do you want to teach this class now? Do you know what I'm going to talk about next? Do you want to? Oh, no. Oh, I'm sorry, you know. And then can I move on to my class now? And I had to do that, and that wasn't easy. I had to do that because it was always just they thought of, you know, young 20-something, 25-year-old white guy, you know, blonde hair with this nice, you know, tie and pen in his pocket. That's what they saw. And I wasn't that person. And so I talk about imposter syndrome. We all have that. Where am I good enough? Talk about that in the point of view of students when you're coming. They're fresh-eyed and all different races. As you talk in the book, people talk about that in the book about they walk into the classroom. They walk into the big hall. As I remember, I took art history, and it was a massive room. They got you. What are some of the things that you notice, if you notice anything at all?
One thing I noticed is they didn't realize who I was, even though I was standing in front of the room. I thought that was the biggest clue that I'm the professor. I'm standing in front of the room. Look, I was dressed, I guess, professionally. I'm the only one dressed this way. I think some of them might have thought, oh, maybe she's some type of assistant. Maybe she's working with the technology. Maybe she's helping the professor with the technology. And so they literally would not even speak to me sometimes until I spoke to them first. I've had that situation more than once, especially on that first day. And then even when I spoke to them, sometimes they would look at me like, wow, she's speaking to me. And then when they realized I was the professor, all of the color just rushed out of their face.
I'm burned for you. I'm upset for you. I understand that. I understand that. Justin, you've had that experience? You know, it was insulting and
I fortunately haven't had that experience yet. Let's knock on wood that we don't go through that yet. But no, I haven't had that experience. But I know just for myself, I guess it just brought up a question that me and Antija were talking about yesterday. Like when you really think about your K through 12 experience and even your college experience, really looking at like how many Black teachers have I had? How many Black professors have I had? And I was telling Antija, K through 12, I had a Black teacher in kindergarten and in second grade, but that just happened to be the same Black teacher. So she was teaching kindergarten when I was in kindergarten, then she happened to go to second grade. So those are my only two experiences. And even with college, I intentionally had to go to HBCU. So I went to Clark Atlanta University where, you know, it was, of course, nothing but Black professors, but you just really think of that about that. I never questioned it at all when I had like a white teacher, male or female. So it's always jarring to hear it from both of you that you guys get this type of challenge of like, yes, I'm standing at the front, or yes, I'm facilitating this, just take the information. And it's just those like little microaggressions of, you know, not responding or, you know, giving a little unnecessary feedback. Let's just get through this together, guys. Like we're all in this together. So, but it's unfortunate that you have these small pitfalls. Like these are very minute things, but people make them unnecessarily big because of their own ignorance.
I'm sorry. I think that just goes into our mental health. So, you know, that we are good enough, but we also have that mindset that we didn't see ourselves maybe as children, and we just assume this. Even in our own communities, we think this is how it should look. Yeah. And we have to keep on telling ourselves that got the education, we've got the skills, we've had the years of training, and we just have to get into that mindset. Talk to me before we wrap up. I know I kind of went on, these tangents, but we talked about mental health. How is all this kind of, when we talked about the end of the book where it was kind of depression a little bit. How have you rised above it in a little bit? I mean, maybe like I said, the book has been therapeutic for you. How can you give people some tips on what they should do as they moving into their lives of being in the workplace, people of color, what things they should be thinking about, how they could, make their lives better than what we might have dealt with? Can you give a little hope as we wrap up for young people going into the workplace?
I think one thing that has helped me, and again, I don't want to make it seem like, oh, I've been doing this forever. Like, these are things that I think I've been more conscious of and more aware of just through my own reflection, is being able to set boundaries. If you are, and this is that I've found true for many Black professionals, especially when you're the only one and they want to stretch you as far as they can, and there's only one of you. So if there's a committee and they want to make it diverse and you're the only person who they see as diverse, then that means that you are going to be on 5, 6, 7, 8 committees. And I have at the same time. Mm-hmm. And so I had to reach a point where I only agreed to things that I knew were going to be helpful to me in my professional journey, right? On the path that I was trying to take, on where I was trying to reach, and things that were really of interest to me and what I was passionate about. I was no longer just saying yes to anything because I was asked. So being able to set those types of boundaries, even when people say, but you're the best at this, and you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Because usually when they're asking you these things, they're also not paying you any additional, and you're just overloading yourself. It's going to lead to burnout. And I've always been a firm believer in that job will go on without you. So if something happens to you, you better believe that they might be, oh, poor Dr. Allen, she was so great. Did we get that job posting up yet? Like, they're going to replace you very quickly. So, you have to be able to set those boundaries, take care of yourself. Self-care is very important. And part of self-care is being able to say no and setting boundaries. That's my firm advice.
And for myself, I just think a lot of the things, there's power in community. There's power in being able to have an area to express yourself, to talk about your concerns. It doesn't necessarily always have to be with your direct team. If you have peers that share certain things, like seeking out organizations, whether it be within your business or within your institution or outside of it, just seek out and, attach yourselves to the work that they do, attach yourselves to the conversations that they have. I think, unfortunately, and it could be an inherent thing if we're talking specifically about the African-American community, where we try and push through things, even when things feel hard or feel as though, there's a lot of pressure, because you don't want to necessarily come off as weak or as though you can't do anything, or that as though you can't get a task completed. You burden yourself unnecessarily. So, of course, to what Antija said, the power of saying no, but then also the power of seeking out support from individuals, like-minded individuals, or individuals that may have a difference of opinion. But it's very paramount for you to seek outlets that allow you to express yourself. When you keep it burdened inside yourself, you wear yourself out very, very quickly. And your teammates will see it, your managers will see it. And unfortunately, even though you're wearing it, even though you're doing what you need to be doing it, they do know that you're burning yourself out. And unfortunately, when you continue to burn yourself out, if you don't ask for help or don't seek a little bit of reprieve or say no, then they'll continue to shovel the work on you. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, you're going to give out. Your shoulders can only sustain so much. But being able to have those communities where you can speak, where you can listen to others, where you can provide your own experience, that kind of gives you a little bit more perspective, and it empowers you a little bit more, because you don't feel as though you're dealing with this on your own. You don't feel alone, and you can use that community to your benefit. If it's in your organization, use that community if you want to get something changed. As we talked about at the beginning of the conversation, there's a power in numbers. There's a power in having several voices. So that's what I would say. Just seek out community. There's power in community, and there's power in expressing and providing your voice through said community.
Thank you so much. We're talking with Dr. Antija Alan and Justin Stewart, and the book is We're Not Okay, Black Faculty Experiences and Higher Education Strategies. Thank you so much for joining me today. It was so uplifting and educational and fun.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Adrienne. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.